All right, here's what we got on the bench today. Dolmar 7900. Um, this is in for performance work, so I ran. It does have an aftermarket carburetor. I did not personally run it. He said it ran okay. I got a box of new parts, and if you'll listen, bearings aren't horrible, but they're not silky smooth. And I'm a big fan of walk before you run. As for the age of this thing, I'm just going to have to guess that it's about 15 years old because these were originally 7900s, and then the later version was a 7910. There's a couple of small differences, but part of the freshen up, besides some new bearings and seals, got a little bit of a scuff on the piston. I mean, I can't even feel that, but I can't see any machining rings left on here anywhere. So we're going to slide a fresh piston in there. I'm not using a factory piston, just to kind of keep this in somewhat cost effective to do this. Makita's really proud of these pistons. They're like $100 just for the piston and ring. We are going to have to splurge for a new clutch, seeing how this one is. Let's see if I can show you. That's the definition of played out. That's in the dictionary on between ruined and dead. Oil gear got cooked. Obviously, somebody, oh gosh, it's falling apart. Anyway, yes. I've got a used one. We're going to slide in there. It's still in good shape. Obviously, it's seen a little bit of heat, but it's just discolored. It still seems to be in good usable condition. I missed that because I didn't have a puller to get this off at the time when I ordered parts. Let's see. Let me get all this stuff cleaned up, and I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at some of the performance work we do on this. Okay, all cleaned up here, and before I put this together, while I was cleaning it, I did notice this is a 2009 model. So yeah, that 15-year thing I mentioned earlier is a good solid guess. Now, see how well I can take you in here and see if I can get you a good look. So that's where the bearing mates to the crank. Same thing over here. See those? Looks like there's been a little bit of slippage right there. When I used my puller and pulled the case half, and it had a good fit to it. So I don't know if that's just when it was getting warm or whatever, but we're going to put an ounce of prevention on here. We're going to use some 620, Loctite 620. It's like a sleeve retainer, and it's gas and oil resistant. It's got a nice high heat rating on it, so it'll be fine. I've used it in the past. I don't think we need it, but it sure couldn't hurt. Got some nice Japanese bearings going into this nice German saw. Okay, new bearings installed. Easier said than done. I ran into something very unique. If you look at this, Dolmar makes an incredibly tight crankcase. All right, we'll just leave it at that. So this is the old NTN bearing that came out of it from the factory. And if you'll look, there's a nice radius right there on the inner side. And this Koyo bearing that I tried to use has a lot less radius on the inside. There's a very tiny, tiny shoulder. It's like a 1/2 mil, 10 thou raised radius on the crankshaft on either side. I had to manually trim that down to get my Japanese bearings to fit in here. I've never, ever had that issue before. All right, after machine work, that's where we're at. And then after final port work, got 80 for the intake, 25 degrees of blow down, and a 97 exhaust roof. These have incredible compression. I didn't take a ton off the base. Just a tiny bit of work to the intake, just kind of squared up. A little bit of work to the lowers. They leave you a little bit of meat right there and right here and right here that you can clean up. And then raise the uppers, obviously. all these open at the same time. I took any step out of them that there was. And then, you know, decent looking exhaust. It's not perfect. I've kind of been hurrying. I spent way too much time. I probably had that case apart 4 or 5 times trying to figure out why. You know, you could actually, you know, pull it together, and as soon as you tighten down the 6 screws that hold this together, it would bind the crankshaft. And without, you know, you'd have no, it wouldn't rotate freely at all. Very, very frustrating. All right, muffler. I did split the muffler. You know, you can just kind of heat this up with a torch and peel it back and then recrimp it. It's a bear to do this, but it's worth it. The older ones, and I just cut that off and left part of the base on the inside just so it has a fair amount of structure right here. I still need to port match this to my new exhaust opening and then add a second port right there. Just got one of these trim to fit deflectors. I'll get that centered on there and shaped and riv nutted down, and we'll almost be done with this. All right, muffler mod's done. Let's see, timing advance, very modest. Again, we're going with this aftermarket carburetor. If I remember right, it did actually run and rev like it's supposed to. Putting the last little bit of stuff on here, boy, I'm on my 3rd day with this saw. It really put me behind. I got a shiny new clutch, because if you remember, that is, as they say, kaput, and a used worm gear. Getting close. All right, watch this. We've got a bad seal right there. Okay. These are actually really easy to work on, so that's no big deal to pull the carb and Das Boot. Das Boot looks okay. I don't see any tears in it, but because I did not take, you know, these two are together. This is the holder for your throttle cable, and it also seals the boot to the carb. So if you look, somebody in the past has gotten hammered. You know, when you screw these intake bolts on, it's just snug. If you crank down on it like a gorilla, that's what you get. And see, that raised lip right there won't allow the carb to seal properly. So this old part saw right here is going to donate something for us. Now, hopefully this one's not chewed up. And I'm a little concerned seeing that. But let me pull this one off and see if we've got something so we can actually put this project to bed. Friends, don't let friends do horrible things to chainsaws like this. Again, this is a part saw. I mean, and by the way, you can't engage the brake. Okay, enough about this. It has, why somebody melted, carved, and chiseled out that area, I don't know. All right, ADD brake. Back to it. This boot I would not reuse, and I think this one's going to be just fine. Not perfect, because I think whatever terrible things happen there, but I've got good mating surfaces on this bracket to hold the boot. So let me put this together and see if we can't massage this thing to life. I could not get it to idle down, is the reason why we came to that, and I showed you to want to wiggled or moved, we were letting it, we had a nasty air leak right there. All right, well, that's a great sense of accomplishment right there, and I'm glad everything was done to this to make it right. It's so important. You can tune around a problem, but until you find the problem, that's not the right fix. You know, you're just playing with fire at that point in time. Anyway, let's just take this thing out to the wood lot. I think this video's already gotten long enough. I'm not going to drag it out anymore. Ideally, I was going to run, I've got a stock 7300 that just has a muffler mod on it against this. But let's just, I got a nice brand new chain on here. It's full comp, 25 inch X-Cut chain. And let's let her rip, Tater Chip. See you at the wood lot. Okay, one more thing before we go. I picked this up at the pawn shop yesterday. This thing's brand hammer new. The plastic wasn't on it, but 15 bucks. This is, even though it says Sunex actually makes these for Mac Tools and somebody else. So there's my 8mm socket. It doesn't come with that, and here's a 10 because you know you got to hold on to those. But anyway, you get a T30, T27, T25, and some Phillips nut driver, quick connect that I don't use. And you know, this is my steel brand bit, but I just keep it here as a spare. Anyway, I thought this was a hell of a score. This is like I said, $100 on the truck, and you can't beat that with a monkey stick. Yeah, there's a ton of mulch after this hurricane. Words don't even describe it. Well, there's the extent of what I cut. There's 2 cookies right there, and I want to go throw it in some bigger wood, and as soon as I got into that little bit of a cut right there, it started starving for gas, and then it didn't want to idle because it was getting hot. We're back to the drawing board. We're going to go put a new carburetor on this thing and give everything else a once over before I hook the new carburetor up. Let's see if it'll do it for me again. No, I won't do it. When I pulled on it, there it goes. There's a small nick in this fuel line. I don't know if I did it or not. I do have a new one. These fuel lines are a little dainty, and it's not unusual for them to get cracked. But I mean, I felt of this, and I was like, okay, that's, you know, the rubber's still in really good shape. Anyway, I got a couple of spares, so let me get this in there, and hopefully that does it. Okay, that's more like it. Pressure and vacuum tested the saw, and the spring clamp or the tension clamp that came on this saw just wasn't holding a good seal. I had a little bit of leakage around either side. Still holding 7 inches of vacuum after a minute or so, so we're good to go now. All right, one quick disclaimer before you watch the cut clip on this. The wood that I was cutting is live oak, and on the Janka scale, it's twice as dense as red oak. So there's nothing wrong with the chain necessarily. You can hear it. It's really grabby in that hard-ass wood. So enjoy it, and then we'll wrap it all up here in just a minute. All right, let's put up a 30-year-old design against these newfangled saws. Well, I can say wholeheartedly that 7900 kicked my butt 9 ways to Sunday. I definitely didn't see all that. The layers of what would have to be fixed, repaired, modified, improved, tightened up, whatever. Next video that'll come up will be a couple of Huskies. I got a brand hammer new 550 Mark II and a 562 Mark II. And I really needed a couple of brand new saws to go dive into after that. And then I've got my old 084 on the bench for a little freshen up. and we'll see a video on that.